I just want to say why not, but it's like
It's a good one as well.
it's honestly, we have there's a very rude expression around in Australia about taking a lick of the ice cream, right? And the point being is that you give somebody a lick of the ice cream who's never had an ice cream, and then you're going to have to fight them for it. I think come to Portugal, take a lick of the ice cream, or in this case, take a bite of the pastel de nata,
Mm.
and I think that's going to change your mind. I think Portugal is not an academic experience from far away. Come, try the bacalhau, try the pastel de nata, and you'll be hooked.
Portugal.
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 Our vegetables are like rock stars.
Literally, Portugal is a small Disneyland for grown-ups.
I think that Portugal is like my geographic soulmate.
It's hard to explain what it is because it's a feeling.
And when I went there, I absolutely fell in love with Portugal.
I wanted to feel the crunchiness.
Portugal, the Simple Life Podcast.
Portugal, the Simple Life Podcast.
And we're here on his podcast, Portugal Simple Life.
Portugal, the Simple Life Podcast, your insider's perspective into Portugal. And our latest episode starts right now. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of Portugal, the Simple Life. And I'm delighted to be joined here by Andrew Bryant. Andrew, boa tarde. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Boa tarde. Okay.
How are you?
Oh, muito bom.
Muito
But
bom.
I think we're going to do this in English, right?
We are going to do this in English for the sake of our listeners. I'm not criticizing the pronunciation. It was pretty good.
Oh, okay.
I just did an episode with a Portuguese teacher, and she grilled me on my Portuguese, and I'm not gonna lie. Under the arms, I was sweating a little bit. Wasn't visible on camera, but yeah.
Okay.
Andrew, why don't you start off telling us a bit about yourself?
Oh, that's an awful question. What do you want to know? I'm English by birth. Don't blame me, blame my parents. I'm Australian by choice.
Okay, there we go.
Don't blame my rugby team.
They're getting better. They're getting better.
I know. I lived in Asia for 17 years. I married to a Brazilian, and I live in Portugal.
That's a good place to start.
Is.
How did Portugal start for you?
So
how did you first discover the place?
Well, I mean, it's a funny story. So, by profession, I'm a professional speaker, writer, coach, and my company was headquartered in Singapore, as I said, for 17 years. And I was I kind of had ideas of getting out, but there was always pressure. I married a Brazilian woman, and it was a remarriage, so not my first marriage. And she kept saying, "I want to get out." And I'm like, "Yeah, but where do we go?" And we looked around, we looked at America. And then the pandemic hit, and then the urge to leave went from a sort of a desire to a need, because Singapore locked down, and it locked down hard.
Yeah.
And then my wife's daughter, Lila, decided that she wanted to do vet science in the UK, got a place. And so my wife, Andrea, said, "We need to move closer." And I said, "Well, I left England when I was 24 in 1985. I don't really think it's the same country to go back to." So she said, "What about Portugal?" And I said, "Well, what about it? I've never been. I've been to Spain, but never been to Portugal." She said, "You'll love it." And I'm like, right. So I did my research on the internet, as one does. And I read about all these wonderful things about Portugal and how it was a great place. My wife then went on the internet Googling houses. She found one that she loved. She cleared the cache, researched, found the same one, cleared the cache, and said, "This is my house. I want this house." Meanwhile, I was doing numbers on the back of an envelope, and one Saturday morning, she's like, "I love this house. I want this house." I said, "Well, put in an offer." She said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, put an offer." So we put an offer on a house sight unseen in Portugal. Obviously, we got some friends in Portugal to go by with an iPhone and video to make sure it was sight unseen. And that was 2020. And then we couldn't move immediately. Lila had to finish high school. And then when she did, we moved to Portugal. And I moved into a house that I had bought 11 months earlier, but never seen.
Okay. And you'd never been to Portugal?
Never been to Portugal.
Had your wife been here?
Yeah, she'd been twice. So she's Brazilian, and obviously language was not an issue for her, and she'd been twice. And this is a case of trusting your wife, but also, I mean, like, a lot of people think that a decision, you can't recover from a decision. Look, I mean, if we bought the house and it wasn't what we wanted, you could always sell the house and you can move. I think a lot of people go, "Oh, it's so brave, so courageous," but I left home at 18. I left England at 24. I lived in Australia. I followed a chance to go from Australia to Singapore. You take opportunities, and if it is a dead end, you backtrack and make another decision. I think a lot of people I talk to who aren't travelers, who haven't lived on different continents, are like, "Oh my God, if you made this decision, it's the end of your life. If it was wrong." I don't see the world that way. And it turned out to be a great decision. And like you, I love living here in Portugal.
Beautiful. I want to get on to what's kept you here. But take us back. What are the, you mentioned that you guys did some research. What were those things on paper? Because now we're talking 2020. When I came in 2009, a lot less online information about Portugal was based on what I knew from visits and what people had told me. But what were some of those things that you researched and on paper you thought, okay, this kind of sounds like it could be a good option for us?
Climate. Obviously important. I didn't, England, a lot less sunshine. So, days of sunshine, and culture, history. The mortgage rate was very favorable. The 10-year non-habitual tax residency was very, and I watched videos very much aimed at Americans as Portugal as a place to retire. Yeah. Now I was nowhere. I mean, I was turning 60 at the point that we bought the house, but I was nowhere near retirement. But I thought, well, if I was going to a place, and I also, one of the things I did look up was the medical care, and that was something I was quite suspicious of, to be truthful. Yeah. Having had world-class medical care in Singapore. But I was pleasantly surprised to read that it was good, and then when I got here, I was blown away. Providing you have a little bit of private health insurance, it's to perhaps top up if you want to see somebody quickly. But I was absolutely blown away by the healthcare.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, take us back to that moment that you got here. You've bought this house 11 months earlier, without being there, coming to a new country. Take us back to that moment and what you remember arriving in Portugal.
Okay, well, it was pretty emotional because just before leaving Singapore, I went through a whole battery of health tests. I mean, I had this expensive health insurance, and I thought, okay, well, I'm about to leave. Let's use it up, as it were. And I said, okay, give me I'm just turning 60. Give me the full service, as it were. Yeah. And they found a lump in my abdomen and decided that it might be cancer. And the best way was to take it out. So just before leaving Singapore, I had half of my intestines removed in the midst of the pandemic. So that was a tad traumatic.
Yeah.
So I'd only just recovered from that when we got on a plane. And we got on a plane with all of our luggage and 3 chihuahuas and a cat. We traveled with KLM because it was the only one that would let the dogs in the cabin. And so thanks to KLM, it was pandemic. So thankfully the flight wasn't particularly busy and the chihuahuas each had a seat for themselves, which was quite funny. We arrive at Lisbon airport and I can't remember. I mean, I think with the cats and the dogs, about 17 pieces of luggage because I had to bring a computer, a screen, and everything to set up a home office because I needed to continue to operate virtually almost immediately that we landed. In fact, I think within 48 hours, I had a keynote speech that I needed to give in Vietnam from Portugal. So anywho, so I arrived with all of these, and it was like 4 trolleys worth. And as you go, you arrive, the carousel's there, we load everything onto the trolleys, we get the dogs it's been pre-booked, they're checked by a vet. That was fairly seamless, but we're exhausted. And I'm looking for a porter. And in Singapore, in Dubai, and anywhere in the world, there's porters to push these. There's no porters at Lisbon Airport. What is that about? Anywho, so I'm post-surgery pushing all these trolleys. And we went through things to declare because we had a folder of paperwork that you have to do. And the customs guy goes, wow, you're the most organized. That's all down to my wife. She had this big folder of stuff so that we didn't pay duty on the stuff we were moving with. And then I kind of like, well, how do I get through? Because, you kind of, once you're through, you can't return. So I said to this guy, if I push this trolley through, can I go back and get the other one? He goes, no. Once you go through, you can't. I said, well, I got 3 other trolleys. What do I do? And he was like scratching his head. I'm like, so I lined up all the 3 trolleys and I'm trying to, and in the end he goes, oh, it's okay. And I pushed those 3 trolleys
Common
through.
sense prevailed.
Oh, common sense did prevail. They're Portuguese people. They're nice, but, he was following the rules, as it were. We had 2 minivans, booked. We filled 2 minivans full of, our luggage and the pets and my family. And we drove to this house, and it's just incredible to, we'd seen the pictures and to turn up and walk through the door. It was amazing and very special and, wonderful after a somewhat stressful journey.
Yeah. When we spoke before agreeing to do this podcast, we spoke about the nightmare that is the airports. I think it's important to say Portugal is not its airports. Don't judge Portugal on its airport.
It's true. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a nightmare. It is busy.
That's good.
And I had been spoiled living in Singapore. Changi Airport is incredible. And Lee Kuan Yew, the first prime minister, the first first prime minister of Singapore, and known really as Singapore's founding father, said that the airport is the first and last place that people experience your country. Yeah. So as you come in, this is your first experience. And he made sure that it was expedited in terms of coming in. Coming in and having huge queues is really, I don't think, shows Portugal to be at its best. Having electronic machines that don't work or work intermittently is not really showcasing Portugal. So, I live here. I don't wish to badmouth the country that is now my new home, but it is not world class. And I would say there is definite room for improvement. So I would love to see that. And things like, initially when I arrived, even though once I'd got, gone to SEFI and got my residency card, that didn't automatically get you through the gates. So I'm technically a resident of Dubai, and so I can just go through the electronic gates. I was a resident of Singapore. I could just go through the electronic gates. But there's no residency privilege through passport control, which I think is a little sad. You've bought a house here, you're paying tax here. And my wife is, I'm not paying tax, but my wife is paying tax here through her income. So we are contributing to the community. It would be nice to feel welcome when you arrive and not have to queue up with all the tourists.
Yes. Yeah. I'm flying in a few days. So, and so are you actually, you're flying.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah, so I'm off. Yeah, I'm off to India on Monday. Yeah,
we'll go through all of that again, and hopefully at some point it gets better. But we got the pet peeve out the way. Your wife said to you, "What about Portugal?" And you said, "What about it?" And she said, "You'll love it." Was she right?
She was. I really immediately.
Can we send her this? We can send her this recording.
We absolutely can. We can absolutely send her this recording. She likes being proved right. She says to me often, my life would be a lot easier if I just took her advice, up front and didn't push back, but I think she likes me because, I think she likes it that I do push back, but she always likes to be proved right. And on this one, she was. And, it was a wonderful sea change after, 17 years in Singapore, which is very high pressure, and, work, and the exhaustion of the pandemic. This was a literal sea change. And, we live north of Sintra, so we get those Atlantic breezes. And it, for me, is a figurative and literal sea change. It changed my life. The first thing I did was walk everywhere. I got lost a few times. But yeah, I went on all these hikes to sign, because it felt weird to live in a place and I didn't know where everything was connected. I knew all these little town names, and so I walked to all the local towns and clocked up my steps. One time I got exhausted and called my wife to come pick me up, and I was standing by a sign that said, "Beware wild boars." And she said, "Have you been walking through here?" I said, "Yeah, I walked through this track." And she said, "Do you know what that sign says?" I said, "No." And she said, "It says, beware wild boars. Please don't walk that track again." I've not seen a wild boar.
Yeah, I've seen one, and they're pretty mean. They're probably pretty. By American clients, often asked, "What about any like wildlife? Cougars and like mountain cats?" No, nothing. The only thing is the wild boar, but you hardly ever see them.
No,
I mean, you've your wife's floated the idea, then you've moved here out of necessity. But that's 3 years ago. Something's kept you here. What are you enjoying about living in our country?
Well, how's the song go? Wherever I lay my hat, there's my home. All right. So, we bought a house here in terms of a lovely house, and it has everything. I write books, so I live in this little village near the beach, and it's wonderfully quiet. And it feels safe. We're a long way away from a railway station, which is always, there's a correlation of crime and railway stations. We're a long way. I can walk to the beach. I'm 40 minutes from the airport, 40 minutes from the center of the city. The people are friendly. They talk a lot, which is nice. And everybody's so helpful. So. It's got everything I need. I mean, even I was worried about the speed of the internet, and the download speed was the same as Singapore. The upload speed is throttled, but it's still super fast compared with Australia or the UK. So, honestly, most things work. This was the thing that we always used to say about Singapore, is that Singapore works. Everything works here. Some things are a bit slow, admin-wise. They take their own pace. Converting my driving license took, I think, 18 months, which seemed a little inefficient. Getting the renewal of your residency pass can be a bit iffy, but those are just pet admin peeves, and mostly my wife deals with those, so I don't experience any irritation with those whatsoever. I even had a run-in with the police because my neighbor didn't like the fact that we'd adopted some cats. And we adopted some cats. We had them spayed. We had them vaccinated and neutered. But they decided his garden was better for doing their business than ours was. And he wanted me to put up a barbed wire fence between our properties. And I'm like, well, they're cats. That's not going to stop them. Yeah. So he called the cops on me. And the cops came, and I explained that we had all the paperwork for the cats, and that it was probably the neighbor that complained. And the cops were absolutely delightful. So there you go. Even the police were nice.
I mean, you come from sort of different cities and parts of the world. How would you compare the pace of life here? I mean, you mentioned things are slow, but the slowness is there's good parts to that as well. What would you say about coming from such, like, you're a busy guy, high paced, coming from Singapore as well, which is a different pace. What would you say about the way things happen here, the pace of life?
Between my job as a realtor at Portugal Realty and hosting this podcast, life is pretty busy. But lately I've been receiving so many messages from people that want to know more about buying property here on Portugal's Silver Coast that I've got to do something about it. So starting now, for subscribers only, I'm offering up a 30-minute session per day. That's 5 30-minute sessions for a one-on-one meeting to talk about buying property here on Portugal's beautiful Silver Coast. This is for subscribers only. So please subscribe to book your session and get in touch with us through the links below via WhatsApp or email to book your session today. I'll be happy to speak to you. It's for subscribers only and it's completely free.
Well, for me, at my stage of life, it's perfect. I once a week go to a yoga class with a bunch of old ladies, which is absolutely fabulous because the last place you want ego is in a yoga class, and so there's no competition. There's a community gym 10 minutes from me with the most antiquated, gym equipment. It is absolute 1980s, even nice. Arnold Schwarzenegger era machine, and too many machines cramped in. You've got to be careful you don't take your shins out as you walk past one piece of machinery. So, I can do my weight training. I've got, a yoga class. I've found a group of retired Americans in Lisbon that I go and play Texas Hold'em poker with every couple of weeks. So, for my male sanity bonding, the men need to, have that. So there's everything here. As I said, I needed to go and get some medical checkups here. That was, I found the Hospital de Luz in Oeiras, which is which is honestly, it's like a hotel, very good. So for my stage of life, it's fine. I wonder, however, with certain things, I mean, if I was doing business here, I think I might find it frustrating. Most of my business is overseas, and I jump on a plane and go and fly somewhere else to speak and do my leadership development stuff. So I think if I was driving business, I think maybe, I'm not young. I mean, I've not been to a nightclub. I haven't drank for a couple of years, so I don't go to pubs or anything. I think I kind of missed, the British pub concept. Portuguese bars don't have the same kind of vibe, but it's okay. I don't look for that in my life anymore. Yeah. So that's all good. I do wonder what the young people do around here. What would they do? God, I wouldn't like to be 15. But in my 60s, oh my God, it's perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a bit about the work that you're doing, Andrew. I know you've written some books, but tell us a bit about all of that.
So I've just finished my 5th book. I'm known for the topic of self-leadership, which I defined with a co-author as the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, feeling, and actions towards your objectives. So self-leadership is all around ownership, responsibility, and accountability, some of which we've been talking about today is, taking ownership of where do you want to live. Most people are defined by an accident of birth, right? Nationality. You're South African, not by choice. You're South African because you were born in South Africa. I said I was Australian by choice. I actually intentionally left England, which I found quite hierarchical, seeking Australia, which I saw as a meritocracy, and chose my nationality for a while. So this element of choosing the frames through which we live is very much part of self-leadership. We are programmed to quite a great degree by fate. And my belief is that we have some choice to take agency of the life that we want to live. It takes a lot of effort because we're on this kind of railroad of that.
Yeah.
The other area is that self-leadership with this ownership and accountability is what really underpins any effective leadership, because you can't lead others unless you can first lead yourself. So I do a lot of work in the leadership space, helping leaders to have self-leadership and promote it amongst their employees. And with self-leadership, executive presence, the ability to project confidence and gravitas and poise under pressure, which then allows us to have influence capital, which is the ability to get a willing yes. So my work is, I've worked with, all the major software companies, developing influence programs, leadership programs, coaching senior executives to step up their own self-leadership and create a culture where people feel empowered to drive their own careers and their own lives.
Very good. So life is pretty busy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there was a bit of a hiatus in moving to Portugal because firstly, there was the pandemic, and then moving here, I kind of fractured my sales pipeline because people kind of expected me to be in Singapore where they could get me. And then when they're like, oh, well, you're not here, then, out of sight, out of mind. But, it's all coming back. I mean, I'm flying to India on Monday, as we discussed, to do a 3-day leadership development program for a software company. And that came about because I had worked with the senior leader before, and now he's got a new team and he wants me to come in. And while people may sort of, look at the cost, the logistics of flying me in, thankfully I've established my credibility in the world enough that is a problem that can be overcome because they want me there. So I get to see lots of interesting places. And the advantage of moving to Portugal is whilst I fractured a lot of my Asian sales pipeline, there are a whole bunch of new places to go and see. I worked in Iceland and Norway and Sweden and Lithuania and Romania, and in November I'm in Latvia. So
you've opened up a whole new network.
A whole new geography of places that wouldn't have hired me when I lived in Singapore. So there you go. And I've been down and last year I was in South Africa and Botswana as well.
Okay. How was that?
It's a long way. It looks, I thought it was closer when I moved to Europe than I was when I was in Singapore. And it isn't. It's a long way. And Botswana, you have to fly all the way down to South Africa and then get the I think they call it the vomit rocket or something from South Africa to Gaborone. So
there's no comfortable flight from to Botswana. That's for sure.
There isn't. It really is. It's not. It's a very small plane.
Yeah.
So
if you've got somebody like us, bigger guys next to you, you have an uncomfortable flight on the way there.
It is. I was just saying this to my son the other day because we were working out at this local gym together, and it's your lats, right, that make you wide, right? So there's the width of your shoulders.
Yeah.
But if you're a big guy, your elbows don't come in quite to the side of your body because your lats are there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So your actual width is how close you can get your elbows to your body, which is a significant side wider. So if you're in a small seat, you need 1.5 seats.
Every time I pray, every time I fly, I pray it's a skinny person sitting next to me because what do you do with your elbows? It's crazy.
It is. I got a night flight to Dubai a few months ago, and I was in economy, but I got the long leg room, thinking that would be enough. And the guy sitting with me was a huge Angolan chap, very lovely guy, who then proceeded to drink as much red wine as the stewardesses would pour him, which was significant. He then fell asleep, rolled over, and gave me a cuddle, and I went, "Oh no, man."
Yeah. So what did you do? Did you do the cough accidental elbow in the ribs? Or
I gave him a bit of a shove, and he slid to the floor. So yes, one of those. Oh, it wasn't me kind of shove, but a shove.
How does it feel coming back? Now that you've been here for 3 years, and I always find when I travel,
4. Sorry to correct you, but I think it's 4 now if we do the math, right?
Yeah.
So 2021, we're in 2025 now. It's 4.
Got to keep
it
on top
adds
of that,
up, my friend.
It adds up. I always find when I travel, it's almost like a reset, and you learn to appreciate the home comforts, But what are some of the things that you appreciate when you get back?
It's I had this thought the other day. I remember interviewing a guy who was his parents were Dutch officially, although his family was German. But they'd become Dutch because they were living in Indonesia, and it was better to be Dutch than German in Indonesia. Okay. And he was born in New York, educated in Paris and West Africa. And he worked for a multinational company. And I was like, how do you see nationality, right? And it was a wonderful guy. He built this tremendous multinational team. And so he didn't have a bias around where somebody was from, which was wonderful. And I said, but where does home feel like for you?
Yeah.
And he said, Air France. And I said, excuse me. He said, well, because wherever I was in the world, I'd be going home to see my parents, but my parents were always moving. His parents were diplomats. But he always, for some reason, they always booked him an Air France. So he was going to see them in Paris or New York or West Africa. And he got on an Air France plane to go home. So he was going home to his parents wherever they were. And so when he got on, his mental association was, oh, I got on an Air France plane, I'm going home. So, and I was thinking about this as I was flying into Lisbon. And obviously I've flown into Lisbon now quite a few times. And it does feel like coming home now. As you come in and you see the April 25 bridge or the Abril 25 or 25 Abril bridge, and you come in and you line up on the, and you see the Jesus Christ, and you know where you're lined up from, and you're like, well, it does feel like coming home. And then you always come out through that, that same gate and turn left, and it does feel familiar now. And I guess, as I said earlier, wherever you lay your hat, that's your home. You make that your base.
Yeah.
And I one of the things about Lisbon Airport is that there's always a bunch of people welcoming, right? So if there's a football team or a sports team, everybody's there. Yeah. It's such a throng of people, and it's so tightly packed. And it really is quite unique. I mean, there are people welcoming people everywhere in the world. The beginning of Love Actually starts with, the arrival gate at Heathrow. But it just seems like it is a cultural pastime to do it here, is welcome people to the airport.
Yeah. I like to pretend when there's a group waiting for a sports team that they're waiting for me, and I just start waving. And then, I just get some strange looks and I carry on. But yeah, Andrew, I mean, I want to ask you a little bit more in a bit about the Portuguese, but there's also a dynamic group of internationals that are in this country now, doing some amazing things like yourself, and for people that are looking to come and to network, the networking is something possible here. There's a large group of people doing amazing work in this country.
There is, and I've started to connect. I've just set up a mastermind with two fellow authors who I didn't know before, and I said, I'd met them through connections. And I said, really, I have an international mastermind that I do via Zoom like this, but I had this idea, are you guys interested in, we find a restaurant where we can have lunch and then stay for 4 hours and connect? And they said, yes, we're interested. So I'm starting that when I get back from India. I met a wonderful lady by the name of Jessica Fontana. Jessica is Italian, but living here, and has set up the Women Leaders Circle, yep, which is mentorship for women around the world. Yep. And she said to me, would you like to be a mentor for these women? And I have, I did women and leadership programs when I was in Singapore, and I said, absolutely. So I mentored a young lady from Mozambique, Mozambique, as we would say here, 22-year-old lawyer who grew up in a slum from a single mum. And, I mentored her. She's now got a place to do her master's in Macau and is lined up to do a PhD at Oxford. And Jessica has brought together this group of mentors. We had a wonderful celebration at the end of the first cohort on the river a traditional. You saw the pictures, on a traditional Portuguese boat. Excuse me, I need to do a little cough. There are wonderful people here in Portugal, and I'm starting to plug. I went along to the first English language TEDx, which is at Mavila.
Anel organised that one.
Anel, and so Anel, we're well and truly connected. So Anel is part of Jessica Fontana's network, and so Jessica invited me to that TEDx, and I paid my VIP ticket, and which was a great idea because the networking in that room was wonderful. I met some super interesting people. It was their first TEDx. The venue was incredible. This former monastery or something, and it's beautifully restored. And I said, look, I've already done a TEDx. I did a TEDx in Singapore. I said, I'll throw my hat in the ring to do it next year and see if you want my ideas for next year's TEDx. I would love to contribute to that. I didn't, I know the guy that runs the one in Aveiro, but it's in Portuguese, so I can't contribute. And the Lisbon one, I think, is mostly Portuguese. So it's happening.
Yeah, and you mentioned the gentleman at the airport that was with helping you with your trolleys getting in.
Not helping me with no
porters. I'll tell you when I in South Africa we never pump our own petrol, and the first time I got to a petrol station in Portugal, I pulled up next to the gas pump to the pumps and I waited and nobody came out, and eventually I hooted. Honked the horn, and the lady in the booth was looking at me with her hands up like this, and I'm busy going. And the next minute, another guy pulls up in the lane next to me, gets out and starts pumping his own petrol, and I felt like a real idiot. I felt like a privileged idiot. Let's put it that way. How's what's your experience been with the Portuguese people? What do you want to say about the Portuguese?
Well, I didn't have that level of privilege, and I've always preferred to pump my own gas, actually. I mean, no, well, they'll pump your gas for you in Singapore too. I don't know. Because I've traveled so much, I don't have that expectation, right? Yeah. I have a wait and see moment, right? I've worked in some interesting places. I've been, Iran or Pakistan or whatever, and I've even been into not the cities of India, but where they way back in the outback of India as well, where you're driving past cows on the road and stuff. I have developed this wait and see kind of filter with people, right? Is because if we've got this expectation that this is the way it should be, and that's the horror of tourists, right? Yeah. And I hate tourists the world over, and I try not to be one, right? Because tourists is there's whole jokes about the British, of course. When the British went to Spain and they couldn't get their particular brand of beer and stuff like this, and of course they destroyed places like Tenerife, or Lanzarote. It's all full of Irish and British pubs because they didn't go to see the culture. They exported their culture. Yeah. And they didn't like change. I have an openness to experience, and I'm like, okay, what are they gonna throw at me, right? And but Portugal's not too much of a culture shock, right? The British and the Portuguese have the longest standing European treaty, I believe. Yeah. And so they're not like the French who hate the Brits. I mean, if you try and speak French in Paris, they'll just they'll turn their nose up and walk away. Whereas here, if you try and talk Portuguese, they'll speak to you in English, and then I often say, "Look, I need the practice," and they'll go along with me, and it's fine. So I love that. It's very welcoming. So yeah, I haven't had a negative experience. I have had negative experiences in other parts of the world where somebody felt like I was a foreigner on their land and was a bit rude, but never had that here.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing for us when we can come here and feel welcomed and feel like people are happy that we're here.
And I hope it stays that way. And I mean, look, I think I understand why people would turn against tourists. I mean, in Sintra, which is up the road from me, there are signs saying that over tourism will destroy the country. I mean, there's trying to get up. There's a back road where I walk up to the Castelos dos Moros, which is absolutely a traffic jam on a Saturday and Sunday. And I mean, if you lived there, it would be a nightmare. Yeah. But I hope that the tourists don't cause the backlash. I mean, in Barcelona, of course, the Spanish are throwing paint at tourists. I can't see that happening here. But if the tourists are rude and obnoxious, and if the tour operators aren't sensible, then that can happen. And I think, so there's two things I would say. I mean, one of my clients back in the day was Singapore Airlines, and I did a number of programs for Singapore Airlines, mostly around leadership, but they also asked me to talk about customer service.
Yeah.
And I did a bit of research, and I went back to them and I said, look, your people don't need training. Your customers need training. I have noticed the expats, when they get on a plane and meet a Singapore Airlines hostess, they smile and are polite to the hostess. I hope this isn't shown in Singapore, because the Singaporeans are quite rude to the hostesses. Now, not surprisingly, the expats get better service, which annoys the Singaporeans even more.
Yeah.
But the reality is that people will give you good service if you're nice to them. So if we're getting bad service in Portugal, we really need to look in the mirror.
Yeah, just come and be nice. Just come
and be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that.
Treat people with respect, and they will do likewise, right?
Yeah, exactly. Andrew, how can people follow you? Tell us about some of your books.
Okay. Well, okay. So my what I'm famous for is self-leadership. So that's easy. You go to selfleadership.com, and that's also my Instagram handle and my Twitter or /X handle at self-leadership. And the name's Andrew Bryant. Google it. It comes up pretty high on searches because I've been out there doing things around the world for a long time, and then that creates a bit of traction. So I'm really not that hard to find. If you want to read some of my stuff, my latest book is called Potentialize, which is about how do we unlock human potential in the age of AI, and that comes out in January 2026. So I'm excited about that.
I'll pop some links in the show notes so people can follow, can check out your books, buy some of Andrew's books as well. It'll be good.
Well, thanks for the plug. Every little bit helps.
Andrew, a final question, and a question that we ask all of our guests. Portugal, the simple life. Why?
I just want to say why not, but it's like,
it's a good one as well.
It's honestly, there's a very rude expression around in Australia about taking a lick of the ice cream, right? And the point being is that you give somebody a lick of the ice cream who's never had an ice cream, and then you're going to have to fight them for it. I think come to Portugal, take a lick of the ice cream, or in this case, take a bite of the pastel de nata, and I think that's going to change your mind. I think Portugal is not an academic experience from far away. Come, try the bacalhau, try the pastel de nata, and you'll be hooked.
I love it. Andrew, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's been a pleasure to have you, and take care. So thank you once again to our guest, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to The Simple Life.